For thousands of years, we've been staring at the Great Pyramid of Giza and asking one single giant question: how? Just how? We've hunted for the tools, the plans, the ramps, and we found next to nothing. But what if we've been looking for the wrong thing? What if the evidence isn't missing at all, but we've just been reading it wrong this whole time? Let's dig in.
So get this. This one sentence lands in an email, and it's from a researcher who spent a decade on a wild new theory. It flips the entire problem on its head. The idea? The pyramids weren't built up. They were carved down. Now, I know that sounds completely impossible, but stick with me because it might just be the key that finally unlocks this ancient mystery.
But first, we really have to wrap our heads around just how incredibly old these structures are. You've probably heard this before, but it's such a great way to put it in perspective. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than she did to the construction of the Great Pyramid. Think about that. For the ancient Romans, the pyramids were already ancient history, kind of like how we think of the Colosseum today.
Okay, Section 1. An impossible wonder. The sheer amount of time that's passed makes the pyramid's existence feel, well, impossible. So let's just look at the numbers that make this a true wonder of the ancient world.
The Great Pyramid soars 146 meters into the sky, and it's made of about 2.3 million massive stone blocks. Its base is an almost perfect square, and the whole thing is aligned to true north with a precision that is just staggering. And here's the kicker. They did all of this without the tools we'd consider essential. As far as we know, they were just using the stars as their guide. Incredible.
And check this out. This is a 4,500-year-old document. It's a logbook from a site manager, a guy named Mir, who carefully detailed how his crew was shipping limestone across the Nile to the Giza Plateau. This proves the Egyptians were fantastic record keepers, which, believe it or not, leads us to a huge paradox.
You see, we have records for pretty much everything else. We have payrolls, we know about the stone supply chains, we even have details about the bakeries and the medical teams for the workers, who, by the way, were highly skilled laborers, not slaves. But for all this incredible, meticulous accounting, the single most important document is just gone. The blueprints, the instruction manual. It's like they wrote down everything except how they actually built the thing.
So Section 2, the usual suspects. Without a clear set of instructions, all we've got are theories. So let's treat them like suspects in a 4,500-year-old cold case. And the prime suspect has always been the ramp.
The classic idea you see in movies is a single massive ramp stretching out from the pyramid. But here's the problem. To get the slope gentle enough to haul multi-ton blocks, that ramp would have to be over a mile long. A ramp that huge would actually need more stone than the pyramid itself. And the real deal breaker? There is zero, and I mean zero, archaeological evidence that it ever existed. No foundation, no leftover rubble, nothing.
Okay, so what if the ramp was more compact? Maybe a spiral ramp that wraps around the outside? Well, that seems clever, but it creates a new problem. It completely blocks the corners. And checking those corners constantly was absolutely crucial for keeping the pyramid's alignment perfect. All right, so what about a ramp inside the pyramid? Well, believe it or not, scientists have used cosmic rays to scan the pyramid's insides, and while they found some cool voids, they found no evidence of a continuous spiraling ramp.
So the most popular theories either don't really work in practice, or they're just not supported by the physical evidence. Which brings us right back to that fundamental question. Where did it all go? To even begin to answer that, we have to start thinking about this whole problem in a completely different way. And that brings us to Section 3, a radical new theory. We're going back to that email and to an idea that might just explain everything by turning the entire process, quite literally, upside down.
This idea comes from a guy named Huni Choi. And what's interesting is that he's not an Egyptologist. He's someone who spent a decade, a full 10 years, meticulously modeling thousands of stones in 3D. He wasn't trying to solve how one pyramid was built, he was trying to solve the entire system that created the whole Giza complex.
And his core idea is what he calls the unbuilt theory. The idea is this: instead of building up, you start with a much larger, rougher mass of stone. Think of it like a giant tiered cake or a trapezoid. Once that rough structure is at full height, the workers then start carving it downward, chiseling away the excess to reveal the perfect pyramid that was hidden inside all along.
All right, Section 4, solving the apex problem. This totally counterintuitive approach brilliantly solves what is by far the hardest part of building a pyramid, getting that sharp, perfect point at the very top.
So here's how it would work step by step.
First, you level the natural hill to create a solid foundation. Second, you build that huge trapezoidal stack on top, which gives you a wide, stable platform at the very top, the full height of the final pyramid. Third, from that safe, flat platform, you start carving downward, which makes it way easier to maintain those perfect angles. And fourth, and this is key, the stone you carve away isn't waste, it's repurposed.
And this is what makes it such an elegant system. Choice Model estimates the initial mass was something like 8 million tons. The final pyramid is about 6 million tons. So what about that extra 2 million tons of perfectly good pre-cat stone? Well, that becomes the raw material for the next pyramid and for all the surrounding temples and tombs. The entire Giza plateau becomes one single, self-sustaining, closed-loop construction engine.
Do you see how this theory just starts checking all the boxes? It solves the apex problem by giving workers a stable platform. Check. It explains why there's no ramp debris because it was all repurposed building material. Check. It fits perfectly with what we know about ancient Egyptian recycling habits. Check. And crucially, it gives the builders constant, clear access to all four faces of the pyramid so they can check their alignments the whole way down.
And there's even some physical evidence that seems to support this. A recent survey of the pyramid's outer casing stones found a pattern of smaller, bonding stones. This pattern suggests that crews were laying stones from multiple directions at the same time. Now, to do that, you'd need a wide, stable, working deck all the way around the pyramid, exactly what the unbuilt method gives you, and exactly what a massive external ramp would make impossible.
Okay, Section 5, an unsolvable mystery. So, is this the answer? Is it definitive proof? Well, that's where it gets a little complicated, because when you can't rerun the experiment, what does proof even mean? You know, in science, proof is pretty absolute. It's based on experiments you can repeat over and over. But in archaeology, you can't exactly go out and rebuild the Great Pyramid to test a theory. So here, proof is more about explanatory power. The best theory is simply the one that explains all the evidence we have and has the fewest contradictions. The goal isn't to find the perfect answer, but maybe the least wrong one.
This leads to one last really fascinating thought. All the major theories struggle because we find, well, nothing. No ramps, no blueprints. But what if that was the whole point? What if the Egyptians believed that a sacred object like this should show no trace of the messy human effort that went into creating it? Maybe the absence of evidence isn't a bug. Maybe it's a feature. Maybe the very last step of construction was to meticulously erase every single sign of how it was done.
In a world where basically every answer is just a quick search away, the pyramids remain one of our very last great mysteries. The unbuilt theory is a really compelling solution, for sure, but maybe the true wonder isn't in finding a definitive answer, but in the elegance of the puzzle itself. And it really makes you wonder, right? If we ever did find the actual blueprints, would we lose something